Good morning. I hope you're having a brilliant Sunday. Today, our story talks about the incredible incident when Jesus walks on water. But let me take you back to John chapter 6, where we were last week. If you remember, Jesus had fed a crowd of thousands of people with 5 loaves and 2 fish. What a miracle! After the people saw that Jesus had done this, they realized, hey, we've heard about him. We've read about him, we've been taught about him. So John reports it like this. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world. Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. So Jesus begins to sense that something isn't quite right here. I think in order to protect his disciples, who by now also might have thought, hey, yes, Jesus should be made king. Jesus says to them, you guys need to get down to the boat and head on out. Now think about it. There's Jesus on his own with thousands of people who want to crown him king. Scary, enticing, tempting even, for sometimes temptations come dressed as great opportunities, don't they? So what to do? Well, Jesus realized that he needed to get away so he could reconnect with his Father in heaven, get realigned with his Father's will, and to get refreshed and encouraged. You know, when our day has been tough, when we've been hearing bad news, when temptations are knocking on our door, when we find our tongues are nearly empty, or our head is about to explode, we need to get away, don't we? We need to find a quiet place, a place where we can be alone with God and be refreshed. Meanwhile, in our story, when evening came, the disciples went down to the lake, where they got into the boat and set off across the lake to Capernaum. By now it was dark, and Jesus had not yet joined them. A strong wind was blowing, and the waters grew rough. By now it was dark, and Jesus had not yet joined them. Have you been there before, alone in the dark? Maybe you are there now. Darkness of grief, darkness of depression, darkness of being alone, or feeling alone, even though there's loads of people around you. Darkness of uncertainty and, well, just fear. Have you experienced a time in your life when you had no sense of God's presence with you? A time when you called or even cried out, but only to get nothing back. And just when darkness seems to be too much, John writes, a strong wind was blowing and the waters grew rough. Do you know that feeling? It's not enough that darkness has overtaken, but now there's turmoil on top of it. There's no money in the account, and now you're getting made redundant. A nagging health problem leads to more tests, and it's far worse than you thought. Your marriage is struggling, and then you learn of your partner's affair. We tend to believe that if we let Jesus lead our life, all things will get better. If you turn it over to him, everything will work out just fine. But it doesn't always happen like that, does it? These guys did exactly what Jesus told them to do. And look what happened. They followed his instructions, and still came darkness and wind and waves. But then, when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat, walking on the water, and they were terrified. But he said to them, "It is I. Don't be afraid. I'm guessing they didn't recognize the figure being Jesus, and that is why they were terrified. Matthew and Mark tell us that they thought it was a ghost, because what they were seeing was physically impossible. And because he could sense their fear, Jesus immediately called out to them, "It is I, don't be afraid." In the Greek, what Jesus said translates, "I am, fear not." Sound familiar? I am, the statement that God uses for himself, and one that Jesus repeated multiple times in John's book. Then John closes out the story with these words. Then they were willing to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the shore where they were heading. Then they were willing to take him in the boat? Really? Willing? The Good News Bible says they willingly took him into the boat. And the New Living Translation says they were eager to let him into the boat. I like this word much better, eager. They wanted him in the boat. They needed him in the boat. Not because they were exhausted from rowing, but because they remembered the last time he was with them when they were caught in a storm. Jesus just rebuked the storm and all went quiet. So here it is then, in this crazy world, in the darkness and turmoil of your life. Are you eager to let Jesus into your boat? Are you even willing to let him in the boat? I like the way John wraps up the story. Then they were eager to let him in the boat, and immediately their boat reached the shore where they were heading. One moment they were in the middle of the lake that stretches 7 miles from one side to the other, battling darkness, winds and waves, and the next moment Jesus comes walking to them on the very stuff that is about to drown them. And they say, "Get in the boat." And the next thing they know, they've reached the shore. Rest assured that whatever the stuff is that is threatening to drown you, Jesus stands above it, he walks above it, he is above it. Now, doesn't that make you feel excited in your heart? All you need to do is to ask him into your boat. Will you?